Welcome to the first of many episodes called Bitcoin Bytes. This is where we explore Bitcoin, ideas, technologies, and the brilliant minds behind them. Today, we have a very interesting interview, and we are joined by two individuals, Jesus and Pablo, whose work will definitely change how we view privacy and sovereignty. Our guests will bring a unique blend of perspectives that will undoubtedly leave you with a fresh outlook and invaluable takeaways. So, welcome to both of you. Shall we get started?
Sure.
Yes.
Great. Can you briefly introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell us what drove you to build a company like Shuken? And and probably later on, please briefly explain what Shuken is all about. Maybe we can start with you, Jesus.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. So I'll try to make it short. So most of my career has been in payments and risk, working in different industries, from gambling to e-commerce, fintech, both at merchant and service provider level. Uh, until one day I woke up and I said I had enough. That's for another podcast, and that was it. I've always had a passion for innovative technologies, especially in the payments and the things of side of things, and things that really challenge the status quo. Therefore, once I really discovered Bitcoin, outside, what people call, it's an asset class, it will go to 1 million. I thought I knew Bitcoin, and I said, maybe I can quit what I'm doing because I realized it doesn't have any meaning to me, and and contributing to what I think is something that really got aligned to my values. And given my knowledge of payments, I saw immediately that Bitcoin might well become Visa 3.0, which is the case for now in Lightning, as we can see. Many comments on that. So I decided to start working on it. Everything started as a personal journey. Things got complicated because my entrepreneurial heart told me that I need to bring my learnings to as many people as possible, and that's the story. And what is Shuken? So Shuken, in a way, I mean, Shuken means Japanese, means sovereignty in Japanese. Sorry, and all I wanted is to create a platform and service that would not only disrupt the status quo, but also to empower individuals and enterprises so they can become sovereign and thrive in this rapidly evolving landscape. So while I was, thinking out loud, all this product, of course, I Pablo, as early contributor to this project, we started pivoting this idea and this and that. And something I had for sure said I didn't want to create another node as a service player, but we had to start somewhere, right? So we started building the tech that would give more control and sovereignty to users, while we enable new business models, incentives, and use cases for no runners. That was the real cause of what Shuken is. So our indexer, which again is for another podcast, is not the purpose of today's, is our first flagship product, along with our SaaS bundles in the cloud, which will also be enjoyed by node runners in their own hardware soon. And just to conclude, we fully understand that also not everyone will might run a node yet to its full capacity, but everyone will for surely have a wallet. So we are obsessed to enable those so they can run our tech so their users can leverage on it. So we need to work for creating the technology for those wallets. Let's call it the Intel inside, okay, kind of approach. And to conclude, we just had great plans. What I'm going to say as a founder, right? We had great plans and see the potential of shooting as a business, but we need to focus on one thing first. And of course, until funding is reached, and then we can continue working on full capacity. I don't know if I answered, Jenny, but maybe Pablo want to add something.
Yeah. So I know Jesus for almost 10 years now. My background has always been tech. So I got my first computer when I was 9 years old, and I am passionate by coding. I have been doing work as a CTO in multiple startups in Europe. And yeah, a couple of years ago, that I jumped fully into the blockchain industry. I got together with Jesus, and we were sharing thoughts about how the Web 1 was actually built on decentralization and freedom. Then the Web 2 kind of broke the trust, and now I don't want to call it Web 3, right? But there is some kind of decentralization movement together with blockchain and specifically using Bitcoin that reminds me a little bit at the origins of internet, right? So I wanted to jump into the project and be a core contributor there, and we have been building since then, right? And it's a very um, passionate project that both Jesus and I are fully immersed in.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to hear your stories, and it's also inspiring to see how your passion and drive led you both to build this company. You mentioned, and also Jesus, both of you mentioned many times the word sovereignty. What is sovereignty, and why is it important?
Okay, I'll make it short, and Pablo will be one more a technical probably answer. For me, sovereignty is a journey. It's impossible. It's a state of mind. It's once you understand what your mission in life is, and again, it aligns with your Bitcoin values and so on. It's a way to be more in control. Of course, in the financial aspect of things and technology, is about decentralization and so on, and that's what we're doing here. But for me, sovereignty is a way to go. So we establish all these foundations of what Bitcoin it's all about. So again, it's a journey for me.
How about you, Pablo?
Yeah, I think sovereignty means bringing back the power to the users, right? We have been for too long sharing our data with centralized, very big tech companies, and giving back the power to the user. It's what we understand by sovereignty.
Okay. And while I was reading the website of Shuken, it has been mentioned that there's a no logs policy. Can you explain to me the difference between no logs and privacy, and how are they related to sovereignty?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. So yeah, many of you know or use WhatsApp service to communicate, and some of us have been switching to Signal, right? Both services they have an end-to-end encryption of the messages. So if I send a message to Jesus in in WhatsApp, no one knows the content of the message, but the metadata that surrounds the message is actually shared with Meta, the company, right? On Signal, this metadata is completely slashed from any of the participants in the communication. So there is no storage, and that metadata never actually touches disk. So no logs means that the metadata of the usage of the behavior of the user with our platform will never touch disk. Therefore, there is no way that we can actually know where that user is coming from or what it's using, how it's using the actual nodes. So privacy can be reached in multiple ways, but it's actually what surrounds the usage, what is important to actually never be stored. So the only thing that we do with the information that we get from the users is actually to understand from what country they are coming from. But we don't store the IPs, we don't have any personal information, nothing that the user does with the nodes is actually never seen or by any of our users in the company. So that's what we push, and to achieve that is not an easy thing, right? Because most of the Linux systems, they or every single service that you use in Linux, right? You need to actually deactivate the logs because logs are there by default. So we pay attention to that, and we push that to the limits, right? Nothing ever touches disk in our systems.
Interesting. And you mentioned about personal data. I'm going to throw this question to Jesus. How can you actually manage a company without personal data? Is it viable based on what Pablo has explained?
It's a very good question, and let me try to answer very concisely. I think we're all seeing the de-googling of the world, and all this Bitcoin movement. It's all about trying every single startup that is working towards that. It's trying to say we don't want to be living in we don't want to live in Big Brother anymore. So there must be a way. So I Pablo gave the example of Signal, and I'm sure there is no KYC yet to download the app and so forth. And we also seen the rise of companies like Proton, right? Which they manage a very successful business. The authorities can go to their offices and say, yes, there is this email sending content to this, but I don't know the content of it, and I don't know who they are, right? I'm talking about individuals. So I definitely see it's viable at individual level. At business level, maybe the business themselves, they are obliged to know who are their providers. So if they get one of our nodes, but the company by design, we will never require anything that the law doesn't tell us to do. And if we think it's too much, we will not touch that business. Period. So for individuals, there's definitely no need, and it's viable. And for corporations, we don't really need it as long as they pay us. But if they require that we need to capture some data about them, so they can send us, they can claim their VAT on the invoices or whatever. That's the very minimum we will do. We're not interested in anything else. So it's definitely viable because such companies are doing it.
Okay. And I guess for Pablo, I mean, from a tech standpoint, is it really possible to be totally private or sovereign on the internet and Bitcoin, given that, this SaaS cloud offering that you have, plus other providers such as Google Cloud is already there?
Um, well, there is always a compromise. The minute that you type an URL on a browser, right, your DNS check will actually create a log in your DNS servers service that you're using. There are DNS services that actually provides you a no logs policy, right? You can use Cloudflare, for example, that you can actually say, okay, I want to go to Shuken.io, but I don't want anyone to actually know that I'm asking for that URL. HTTPS is providing secure connection between the browser and the server. And if you use a DNS that is actually have a no logs policy, then you are covered. Most people are just using Google's DNS or some other DNS, and of course, there is data leaking, right? This metadata that I was talking before. So together with our nodes, we are actually deploying an onion address, right? An onion address is a URL that you can only browse if you are using the Tor network. This also provides some level of no logs and allows you to browse safely without anyone else overseeing that information while you're using that. I think we also have a duty to train and educate our users, right? If I mentioned Tor, Cloudflare, Signal, some of the services, Proton, as was mentioned, these are services that are actually born with the privacy DNA before anything else that they are doing, right? So we only see far because we are standing at the shoulders of giants, right? This is something that we learn, right? And that we trust that we are going to use the tools to provide the managed level of sovereignty for each type of user that we want.
And Jesus, do you want to add anything from what Pablo said?
Pablo is the technical guru, so I think he already answered it very well. So
Okay, so I guess for Pablo as well, I mean, what tips would you give someone who is keen to know more about all of these, but that doesn't know where to start or how to start? What are the basics things that we need to meet to be able to understand much better?
Yeah, I think that trust is recovered by open sourcing and the software, right? So most of the companies that I mentioned, they've already open sourced their libraries at least. So you can, if you are a coder, a programmer, you can actually check it by yourself, right? And using OSs that allows you to have a certain level of privacy, like Linux, it's also a good start, right? Learning how to use Linux is not that difficult. For example, you can start with Ubuntu. It will provide you a very good user experience, and it comes by default with a lot of the tooling that we've mentioned before. It all starts with a computer. So it all starts with the selection of the OS that you have on your computer, and the tools that you actually, and the applications that you actually install on your mobile device. Um, and there are multiple tutorials online to try to follow and increase the level of privacy, therefore sovereignty of an individual. It's about starting to play a little bit with the tools. They are not difficult tools to learn, but you need to make the first step, right? By selecting the right OS and the right applications to create a safe environment on the internet for yourself.
Jesus, would you like to add something to this?
Yeah, I mean, just to add, I mean, as in my career, I became more of a business product guy. I lost touch with the hands-on stuff. So when I started this, Pablo really gave me a masterclass of starting doing the if we're going to build a privacy focused company around Bitcoin. And he went down the rabbit hole. Okay, use the command line. So it's not so difficult. I've seen it myself. It's not for everyone, but again, it's a journey. And if you really want something, you have to do something, right? And I will only add that it's so easy in comparison to when I started my career to learn things nowadays. And there's tons of people also on different areas to learn about privacy about doing transactions and how to use Linux or whatever. So if you don't want to learn, it's never been so easy to learn. So it's an excuse basically. So
So, I guess for a lot of people, they're not going to be as knowledgeable, such as you and Pablo. But for plebs, for a lot of plebs out there, this can be a bit overwhelming. But so, Pablo, if I were to use Shuken, how does it protect me from? How should I use it, and how will it protect me?
Yeah, so for using any kind of blockchain, not just Bitcoin, right? You need a node. That's the first step. Um, Operating a node can be hard if you don't have a lot of infrastructure and DevOps maybe skills. So Shuken provides a solution, a cloud solution for the user to actually deploy their own node, right? Wallets connect to the nodes to do assertions to the blockchain, right? To execute commands and create transactions. So deploying a node at Shuken is as simple as clicking on spin up a node, and you will be guided on actually how to do that very easily. And then you can pick your wallet of choice and connect the wallet to the node to actually make sure that there is no man in the middle actually interfering with what you're doing with your own Bitcoin. Um, there is a guideline. There are some tutorials already that we created, but these two components or loosely coupled pieces of the puzzle are the node that you can deploy on a cloud infrastructure that we manage and that we provide safe access to that. And then it's just connecting your wallet of choice to that node.
All right. So, as you said, by using my node and connecting my wallet, I'd be able to do a lot of transactions. But how can you convince customers that they can trust you and that Shukin is really a no logs kind of company and privacy first Bitcoin company?
Yeah, Jesus, you take that one.
Yeah, I will start taking that one, and maybe then I ask you a question so you can respond to the audience. I will start simply like there's a company that I see as a lighthouse for everything I've done. I've been in Bitcoin for many years, so the Samurai team with the Samurai wallet, they've done incredible things, different era, different times, and what they build is amazing. They're really the ninjas, and inspiring in many ways, regardless of what people criticize then about their, you know, their marketing approach to communicate whatever, which I don't give a damn. Then Shuken becomes in a different era, and we're trying to build something uh, probably at the same level. Of I don't like comparing of what Samurai is doing. People can believe me, cannot believe me, but there is a critic that they do to Samurai to people who don't have a node, and they say, "Oh, but my XPub is exposed if I connect to the Samurai nodes while I do my mixing." That's what they're very well known for. So I reply with the same thing that people come back, investors and other people. So can I trust you if not all your code is going to be open source? How can I trust you? So trust, people trust Samurai, and then they think they're doing phenomenal. And doesn't matter what you do, they're going to criticize you anyway. So we need the support of the community, and not just this speech about code is low and open source is the panacea for everything. There's always going to be some level of trust that you need to have in some companies. Otherwise, don't do anything and just stay home in your bubble and protect yourself. So that's my business explanation. But I'm sure Pablo can
Yeah.
explain more about how do we protect consumers not to expose an XMAPs in our community offering product, for instance. But again, I mean, how can you convince a user if not our code is open source? So Pablo will explain it much better than me.
Yeah. So, well, as you mentioned, XPub, that is actually visible when you connect to the Bitcoin Core application, right? Because the way that we deploy the Bitcoin Core nodes that are used by the wallets to interact with the with the blockchain, we are actually sending all the logs, the internal logs that Bitcoin Core writes by default to something called dev null in Linux, right? We are just trashing directly the logs in a place that there is no way that we can recover. That allows us to to say, okay, even if I wanted to access the logs are not there. They've never actually touched disk in a way that we can actually recover that. And you are going to see that directly in the components that we open source, right? Like Linus Torvalds always said, talk is cheap, show me the code. So we can talk for hours about how we do things, but if you are willing to take a look and a peek into the code and understand that we are actually pushing the boundaries of the no logs policy to every single service that we do, then you will understand that yes, we are taking this very seriously, right?
Yeah.
And in the Bitcoin era, given that trust to the users is very difficult. There is a lot of providers of nodes out there. There is a lot of node providers that are using specific cloud providers that they cannot assure actually that the no logs policy is actually being taken to the limits as we are doing. That's why the way to check that is through the open sourcing of the libraries that we use. And we are going to start by doing that with the node dashboard. If you deploy a node, you will see that there is a dashboard that you can manage your node. And all the components inside that and how we deploy Bitcoin Core, Fulcrum, any other services that is actually needed for the wallets to operate, you will see that the logs are just thrown to the garbage.
So, but Pablo, I mean, again, we're on the topic of open source. Many will ask and challenge, how can you be trusted if not all of your code is in open source?
Well, yeah, you can deploy your own node in your own infrastructure, right? And then you will see that their logs are not there. So that's is the same code base that we deployed to our cloud infrastructure is exactly the same. So this is actually how we provide trust. We can even share the same commit hash of the code base for you to check that what you're seeing on cloud is actually what you can deploy locally. And locally, it's very easy to check if there are logs there.
I will only add that a comment I've been seeing. I've been through my career before. I've seen many things, right? And it's just a comment here, but probably is very controversial, and we can open for another discussion some of the time. A lot of people, they just claim to be core contributors, and they just want to contribute. Open source is the way. Open source is the way. Open source is the way. But they don't have a business model, so eventually, most of them will die. There's probably only one real wallet. I mean, it's changing now, that has a business model, which is Samurai through Whirlpool and so on, right? Um, and some of the companies are coming and are building, very complicated stuff that we're building, and people are also, so if you're not open source, I don't trust you, right? So first, you need to protect your all your work, what you're doing, and of course, the path is open source, but it's not the only solution, in my honest opinion, because all these developers, open source, all they want is, and I've seen it a lot in other industries, they talk a lot, they contribute, they create a big name, but they get paid by a fiat lord, and that's not that for me. It's a sign that. It's something broken about the open source, all these core contributors. Not all of them are like that. They're truly people I admire in the Bitcoin. That's why I joined this industry. But there's a lot of talk about open source that people don't really know the extent of it. That's my view.
Well, again, we've talked about everybody's point of view and the other players in this industry. So, Pablo and Jesus, what are your insights and additional viewpoint about the industry, and what do you think it needs or lacks?
You want to start, Pablo, first?
Yeah, I think that So the open source community, right? At the end, it's a bunch of people that are actually contributing with their code on some repos, right? Bitcoin Core has now only 3 core contributors, which is a very big problem because it's a very limited amount of developers. The Linux kernel has maybe 10 times more developers. And they are both decentralized, right? No one is actually um, managing the direction of the development. There are Bitcoin improvement proposals, the BIPs, and Linux kernel. They have the request for comments on and everything that they do. So I think that the problem is that the amount of developers that are actually maintaining the very big application that is supporting the L1. I think that we cannot just let that be run by this very little amount of developers. So I would like to see more people jumping into supporting the L1 development. Everybody is kind of getting crazy with Lightning Network and the L2s and the possibilities, etc. But let's not forget that the truly decentralized application and the peer-to-peer protocol is actually Bitcoin, right? And even the Lightning Network developers, they admit that they are not decentralized; they are distributed, right?
Mhm.
This is a very important difference.
That's a good point.
So I think that we need to protect the L1. There needs to be more Bitcoin improvement proposals and maybe allowing people to actually join those developments. It would be a better thing to do right now. There should be a way to increase the number of core contributors there.
Yeah. I just yeah, I agree 100% with what Pablo said. Back in a while ago, talking to Pablo, we were laughing, saying maybe we end up just doing Bitcoin Core if we really want to create the movement of what we want to do as a company. But yeah, I 100% agree on that. And just to add something to that, it worries me some developers, unfortunately, because of some fake Toshi scammers, that they scare away some developers. They also, contributed towards people not really wanting to contribute to Bitcoin Core. Um, a lot of companies they came to be like studios for Bitcoin developers and grants. It's still very young, this industry. I don't really like big corporations paying developers to just focus on Bitcoin Core. That could be lobbying efforts that we don't know how it's going to end up. It's not thinking bad. I'm paranoid, but this reminds me, and Pablo and me, we have discussed this of the Linux crisis that we had many years ago, and that all the big we know how this started and how it ended, that the Microsoft and Apple took advantage of, and they created their monopolies. So I think Bitcoin is in that moment as well. There we can talk hours about insights and trends and so on, but for me, our main purpose is to support the decentralization. We're at a critical time now. Before people get excited about ETFs and massive adoption, we need to have enough layer of samurai-alike companies like ourselves that we want to really contribute towards really freedom, and we need support from investors, people, peers, and we need to trust each other to really counteract the efforts on decentralization that it's happening mainly in Lightning and so forth. That's what I would add.
There's a lot of things that the industry still lacks,
Mhm.
and we could talk about it for hours. But I guess before we wrap up, would you be able to give any advice or words of wisdom for aspiring individuals who are looking to make a difference in the Bitcoin era? Let's start with Pablo, then we can end with Jesus.
Yeah, so the Bitcoin network resilience sits on top of the nodes, right? The more nodes, the more decentralization. The more nodes running a specific version of Bitcoin Core, the better, right? I think that by running a node, experimenting what is running a node with Shuken, or downloading the repo and building the dashboard and running the Bitcoin on asteroids node on your Raspberry Pi contributes to decentralization, right? So run a node, understand why it's important, um, and protect the network by doing that, right? That would be my last advice.
Thanks, Pablo. How about you, Jesus?
Woof. Well, my advice would be to never underestimate the power of your curiosity and continuous learning. This is a humble exercise, this industry. The Bitcoin industry is constantly evolving, and to truly create a lasting impact, it's important, I think, to stay at the forefront of what technologies are coming, the trends and opportunities. And also for anyone wanting to join, I mean, it's embrace failure, as a stepping stone towards success, and mainly surround yourself with a diverse, talented team who share the same passion and vision. And I'm very gifted, to do it with Pablo and some others, and really gifted. I'm thankful for that. Most importantly, I think I will never lose sight of the ultimate goal to create a positive change and leave a lasting legacy so we can live and have a better future outside the dystopian and authoritarian world we're now living in. And lastly, I will say for anyone who may listen to this is follow your heart, your passion, and the rest will come one way or the other. Stay focused, keep humble, and just build it.
And on that note, thank you for the incredible advice, Jesus and Pablo. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to both of you. So we look forward to seeing how the future unfolds and how we can collectively shape the Bitcoin industry for the better. So for now, thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode.